Welcome, fellow adventurers, back to the Frog God Games YouTube channel. Before we dive into this interview, I want to give you a little background on what we're doing with this channel again, just in case you have missed it over the past couple days through any of the other forms of social media. We're going to be uploading a video every Monday to the Frog God Games channel, and then we're going to be sprinkling in extra videos during the week, depending on the week. But that's pretty much all the announcements I have for today. Without further ado, I would like to introduce our amazing guest today. Today's guest is not only a friend of mine, but has been a mentor for me as well in the RPG community. He has also played a role in the streaming and ultimate face nature of the Frog God Games. The Dungeon Master Extraordinaire, Benevolent Philanthropist. I suck at words today. And the 5th edition mind of Frog God Games is Edwin Nagy.
Hey, how you doing?
All right, well, welcome to the show. I'm so happy to have you on. You're the first guest that we're having on like the new wave of Frog God videos. Thank you very much for joining me today. So I mentioned that you're sort of like the 5th edition mind of Frog God Games. Can you give us a little background or a little bit more information on what all that entails?
Yeah, I guess there's two parts of it. One is stylistic and the other is mechanical. But basically, as Frog God is making the transition from other editions and Swords and Wizardry to 5th edition, not that we're getting rid of the other editions. Don't throw rocks at us. We're sort of trying to find our own way to present the material. And so trying to find something that is comfortable for people who have been using 5th edition from other publishers, but is also meshes well with Frog God. And then obviously we want to get the rules right and, not have contradictions or things that are sort of broken in terms of mechanics. So we've been doing those. I've been really trying to guide us towards a consistent style, and we've sort of stepped a little left and a little right, and I think we're getting there. But
yeah, I think that's an important point. What you mentioned there is sort of the idea of balance in 5th edition. Often when I am writing for 5th edition, I find I'm underbalancing things, not specifically on purpose, just because of the way that the monster CR system works. So it's good that you have someone. What was that?
Do you mean difficulty wise?
Yeah, like the challenge of the encounter. I actually, little fun thing is for our last Kickstarter, wrote a little module for BX, and then literally like an hour after I started my 5e, another 5e thing I'm working on, and it was just drastically different, like not even in the same ballpark. So it's good that we have someone that's sort of guiding that style and making sure you're like the overseeing eyes on everything, making sure that everyone is mushing.
That's the goal. Yeah.
So do you find any challenges in doing that? Working with it, you're not just working with yourself. This is a pretty relatively large publishing company, so it's a lot of other people contributing to these projects. Do you find any challenges with that at all, or does everyone kind of work in cohesion?
I think if I didn't find any challenges, it'd be a dull job and I wouldn't do it.
True. That's fair.
Yeah, no, there's definitely, there's challenges that are sort of fun challenges of somebody has presented something in Swords and Wizardry, or maybe it's an older thing from Pathfinder or whatever it is, that gives a certain feel to the GM and to the player, and trying to turn that into 5th edition and keep the same feeling of whether it's excitement or terror or uncertainty or whatever it is, while following the mechanics is definitely a fun challenge, and often requires going back and forth with either the original author or someone to try to figure out how that's going to work.
Yeah, that's definitely like I said, converting between editions can sometimes be a little tricky, which in my opinion is kind of a good thing, because it makes 5e sort of its own sort of standalone, very different from the other editions. That makes it fun and new for players and writers and game masters all together.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, because I think many of us say, well, you can play any game in any rule set, and to some extent that's true.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's also the truth that the different rule sets give people at the table a different feel, and so it's a different flavor of game that they're strong for, that the rules are good for.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so want to sort of get you out of the way, so like this is all about you today, but I just wanted to give people yes move out. I have another guest coming in, so you have to leave. So yeah, you sort of that's sort of your main role with Frog God, right? 5th edition mechanics, 5th edition style, or correct me if I'm wrong.
The other thing I am working on doing, and this is relatively new, is basically project management, organization.
Oh, perfect.
Trying to, I guess, bring some of my sensibilities for organization and management to the company to formalize us a little bit.
Okay, so in a way, I'm going to sort of transition that into the next question I was going to ask, because we're on the street. Are you now a partner for Frog God Games?
Checks in the mail. So yeah, they at the last Frog God annual meeting, which was at North Texas, the existing partners voted to bring me on, and a little bit of paperwork going back and forth, but by the end of the month, yes.
That's awesome. Congratulations to that. That another reason why I wanted to have you on the show is, you're, more than ever, you're going to be more involved with Frog God Games because of that reason. Whether you want it or not, that's usually kind of how, that works when you become a partner. So yeah, congratulations. I always ask for constructive feedback in the comments. You guys know that. But today, just throw a little congratulations at Edwin, because that's
right. I do not want your feet. No, I'm just kidding.
Awesome. He's perfect. We all know this. Just congratulate him. Yeah. So kind of sticking with the idea of 5th edition, and we've talked about old school editions. How do you have any like specific insights on how you guys have been writing for 5th edition, but keeping an old school feel? I know that's kind of a challenge for a lot of publishers to do, at least publishers that I've talked to. I don't know if that's a widely known thing. But do you have any sort of like insights on how you guys try to keep that old school feeling?
I'll be honest with you. I'm not 100% sure what the old school feeling is, because I feel like there was a lot of different styles of play back then, and there are still a lot of different styles of play.
Sure.
I mean, there was a few things that we sort of come back to when we think about old school styles of play, and I think one is a certain deadliness to the adventures.
Yeah, that kind of idea that like,
yeah,
just around the corner, go get the treasure, like, sort of like those, I almost want to say cliche ideas that people think right when they think of old school gaming.
I think the deadliness and the flexibility that sort of anything can happen.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily Gonzo, but you could go that way too. But that both of those things, and I think that second one, the flexibility, is really the tough one, because one of the things I think of when I read old modules is that they always had mechanics in them that were made up by the author.
Yes.
If you want to cross this pit, roll 3d6 under your dexterity, and if you fail that, make a saving throw, and then you're going to take you have a 90% chance of taking 3d6 damage, or whatever it is, like,
Yeah.
And some of them were really clever, and some of them were just idiotic choices, but they were the industry sort of feeling its way out into how do we do the things that we want to do.
Right.
And 5th edition has formalized many of those, not all of them. And so I think one of the things is allowing a little bit of flexibility here and there. So I just translating? It's one of the modules that goes with the Sea King's Malice, the Lighthouse of Ananmarath, and somewhere in there, there's a 1 in 6 chance that the spiders will notice the party as they pass the hole with the cobwebs.
Yeah, sure.
And I could have changed that to the spiders have a passive
perception of a certain, yeah, right, yeah.
This one, I'm just leaving this one because it's simple, it's clean. We don't need to do, if the party is intentionally being stealthy, I'm sure the GM will figure out that whatever.
Right.
But I decided to leave that one because it was a nice touch.
Yeah.
But some of the other ones that are a little clumsier, or where there really is a solid 5e mechanic there, then I swap it over.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you used that as your example, because I'm gonna send this to my friends, this specific clip of what you just said. I personally like this is. I'm not gonna make this. I could make this an hour-long conversation about passive perception if I really wanted to. I'm not a fan of it. I don't know, like I don't even have like a really good reason why I'm not a fan of it. Probably because the first 5e campaign we did, one of my players had a 25 passive perception, so it's like. It just makes it a little game breaking. There's ways to limit it and make the opponents, extra stealthy and have the environment be dim. So there's like a -5 or whatever. Like, but that's when you dive into like super hard, like you're sticking by the rules. You have to make up rules to try to combat it, because if not, and it's just much easier to, like you said, just throw the D6 up and then let the fates decide whether, the spiders see him or not, rather than having a, intrinsic check that's just going off at all times, like pretty much no matter what the scenario is, unless they're sleeping or their eyes are closed.
I didn't use passive perception in my home games for years, and I finally started using it, and I was like, maybe I should give this a second try. And it does change the game, but I think about that one too, because there's one of the things I think about is that the secret door that's never found doesn't exist.
Sure.
And so in some ways, I really want the passive perception to happen, because I want them to find cool stuff. And of course, the players enjoy finding
cool
stuff.
Yeah.
But the ambush, you kind of want that to go off. You want the ambush to happen because that's exciting and fun sometimes. But
right.
You really want them to find the secret door because that's also exciting and fun.
Yeah, totally. I agree. I mean, specifically talking to the ambush point, there's a lot of times when the players get the jump on the monsters.
Yeah.
There's not as many times personally where I find the monsters getting the jump on the players, unless they're playing against like, ambush sort or intelligent enemies. So yeah, I find passive perception is super inconvenient in a lot of situations for the dungeon master mainly. I mean, there's only been a couple times where the passive perception of the players really just kind of, screws them over, for lack of a better phrase right there. This question, I don't know if you like. I don't know if I could ever answer this question, but I'm gonna throw it at you anyway because I'm that guy. Do you have like a favorite project that you've contributed to for Frog God? And this isn't before you answer. I just want to say this doesn't mean it's the best product in your opinion.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely.
Like the most fun that you've had contributing.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a tough one because
it's a tough question. I know. Yeah.
I was thinking about it a little bit, and I think I think the work I did with Rappanathic, because it was kind of deep and it was late in the process, but it included also the live stream stuff, and so and then running it at cons and seeing the 3D printed version of the level and all of those things put together were kind of fun. But it's also been really exciting. The last two projects I've worked on, City of Brass and Sea King's Malice, watching our art trajectory increase, improve, and the cartography improve. And
oh my gosh, it's crazy.
That's been really exciting. Of course, I have nothing to do with that at all, but I've really been enjoying it.
This is just something that you've been a part of. The beauty of the books. I read Wizards books all the time, and City of Brass and Teagle, from what I've seen so far, I'm at the bottom of the totem pole, so I don't get stuff all the time. But they're certainly on par with the interior of the Wizards of the Coast books, which
Yeah.
is important for third-party publishers to be able to compete on any level with I don't want to say compete. I'm going to retract what I just said there. It's important for us to, be another option for players and DMs. And in doing so, you have to sort of, be on par with them on every single level. So, like Alyssa
Well, I think,
is, doing great work with the maps. Casey's art direction is unbeatable, in my opinion.
well, I think I'm happy to get rid of the word compete with you, but I like the word challenge because I think
Oh
that
yeah.
helps us. And I mean, they challenge us by their existence, and hopefully we can challenge them. Not in a business competition sense, but in a we can make cool stuff too, and
Yeah, like
stuff.
we can all be bettered by this, like
Exactly.
because
Yeah.
we see them doing one thing, we're like, okay, how do we top this? And then they look at us and say, how do we top this? And then the product's just by fault, by competition of to be honest, like sort of capitalism, this sort of sense of competition, everything is going to get better. And the I'm sure you know him. His name, Chris Haskin, with Nord Games. I always butcher the saying that he always says, but it's like it's when the tide rises, all the ships rise with it. I
Oh
believe
yeah. Yeah.
that's right. Plus or minus a couple words.
A rising tide raises all ships.
That's it. Thank you. This is why I had you today to back me up. But yeah, it's true. I mean, what is sort of in a more business analytical sense is when the market share grows, everyone's going to win. Create your own market, create your own demand. So, yeah, it's important for the books to be improving in a beauty sense as well. It's not,
I think
not
so.
just the writing sense,
Yeah, although the writing, well, and I think the story too. I mean,
Yeah, totally. Mm-hmm.
and that's been fun of watching what kinds of twists and turns and dilemmas we can come up with, and how that's changed. I've been enjoying actually some of the Wizard stuff. The variety of type of story they have in their big books has
Yeah.
been really exciting.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm specifically, I'm super excited they did some stuff with Saltmarsh.
Yeah.
Yeah, just stalking recently. But yeah, like my favorite hardcover, I think, might be The Curse of Strahd.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really well done. Tales from the Yawning Portal has a very close connection to me, just because I grew up playing old school D&D, and then it was cool to not have to do all the work converting
Yeah.
modules to run in my 5e game. But yeah, those kind of books I like because you can just sort of sprinkle the adventures into your home campaign, without having to run a hardcover for
Right, for a year.
for a year. Yeah. 2 years mostly in my
Yeah.
experience, because people don't show up to game night. It's the biggest dilemma. Biggest dilemma in gaming is people not showing up to game night. So that being said, sort of talking about other publishers or other games, do you have a favorite D&D product? And this could range anywhere from just a game system in general, or like a module or campaign book, supplement guide.
So I'm gonna say no.
That's a fair answer. That's a very fair answer.
There are lots of ones that I like. I mean, I have a unreasoning fondness for my first edition books,
Sure.
uh,
Mm-hmm.
just because they're so well thumbed, and I sort of they're an old friend. But there's been so much good stuff that's come out recently that I've really enjoyed. I didn't, as a kid, I think either I didn't know what we were playing or it was homebrew. So I don't have a lot of nostalgia for a lot of the old modules. I mean, I have the Village of Hamlet from when I was a kid. I
Sure.
still have a copy of that, and so I like that. But I feel like in the old stuff, I don't have a lot of a lot of breadth from back then. I'm learning more and more about it recently, and then the new stuff. Boy, there's just so much. I have to give a shout out to Monkey Blood and Glenn Seal and Mitherland stuff.
Yeah.
I worked with him, and that's been really fun. And the Frog God stuff has been great. The stuff I did with Zach, I enjoyed, and I enjoyed seeing that product before I was involved in it, the lesser known.
Yep.
So I mean, there's just it just sort of depends on mood. I feel
Sure.
I feel the same way. People ask me what my favorite whiskey is, and I say it depends. Depends on what dinner I've had, or.
To be honest with you, I don't think I could name a brand of whiskey right now. Is
That's
Jameson
good.
whiskey or no?
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. That's the only one I got. Was Maker's Mark whiskey, or is that like?
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. There's two. God,
Well, whiskey's the RPG, and then you get
Right.
Scotch and Irish and bourbon and all the little.
Gotcha. The subplots of
Yep.
of the campaign. Okay, last sort of tough question. I know I'm throwing all these tough questions at you, and you're like Rocky. You're just kind of like dodging them.
Okay.
So in 5th edition, is there like a rule or mechanic, anything within the rule set that you think could be improved? And this isn't like that is bad. Like, for example, I think passive perception can be changed, and passive checks altogether can be done better. Do you have anything like that where you just don't use it, or you think, or you've done better with it?
The one I have not figured out how to really enjoy is inspiration as written.
Okay. Yep.
I think so what I have told my players is that I don't use inspiration, but that pretty much anytime they can give me something cool, I will just give them advantage or give the monsters disadvantage right then on the spot.
Okay.
And to me, that's an improvement over this. Sometime in the future, you have this single thing that you can use, but you're going to forget about, and I'm going to forget to hand it out. And I don't say it's not bad. I just haven't figured out how to use it well. And I don't know if it's because I haven't played enough games that have bennies, things like Fate and Savage Worlds and all that, where you sort of get into the Star Wars, where you get into the habit of. Mm-hmm. But I think it's just not quite. It's not quite baked in. I think if there were. I don't know what it would take, but I think it needs more, or it needs to be gotten rid of. But it's sort of on that awkward.
It's in like this strange, like you said. The only reason that I totally agree with you, and I honestly I had a weird feeling right when I asked the question that you were going to say that. So we must be on the same level right now. But yeah, I usually don't use it a lot in my game, because like you said, it's if it's sort of as written, it's like a check mark on your character sheet that at some time of need, it could be a month down the line in game, could be 2 minutes down the line. All of a sudden, this because you did a cool thing or an intelligent move way back, all of a sudden this luck sort of kicks in, and then that's kind of when it falls more into the feat side, like the lucky feat or a luck sword or something like that. So
there are a bunch of mechanics that do that type of thing. I mean, the bardic inspiration, the luck, the portents,
mm-hmm.
And all of those feel fine. Like those feel like they're part of the system in a not tacked on way.
Yeah, it feels just more of like I hate to say more of a magical sense, but it seems just much more of a raw sort of inspiration rather than the inspiration system itself, because it's also hard to describe that in game, like other than all of a sudden you got lucky. Like
it's very much
in the sense of the combat or what the characters are doing. It's kind of hard to say this is why you're getting
why. What to take you back to a question you asked earlier about old school stuff. I think one of the other old school ideas is the idea of player skill versus character skill. Mm-hmm. And inspiration, as far as I can tell, is one of the few 5e mechanics that directly rewards player skill.
Yes, definitely. That's sort of like the same idea. I know this is way off topic. We don't have to go there, but like puzzles, right. Like that, people don't straight up just don't use them because they, it's much more of a player skill kind of thing. My players are pretty good on it just because we're like best friends. We've always, gamed together and stuff. So we're very easy to play with. Like my, friend who was playing a 7 intelligence dwarf barbarian would pretty much sit out of puzzles because he's like, my character is not going to have any idea unless it's dwarf. Like there's no chance. So I think that's a really, really good point to bring up about inspiration. That never even crossed my mind that it is sort of player skill, or it's the player's hand sort of directing
Yeah, yeah. I
rather
mean,
than the
if
character.
the player says something funny, or the player comes up with some really good role playing bit or whatever it is, then the player has the choice of when their character gets this extra bit of luck.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Um,
think it would be kind of fun if I had you back on in the near future just to talk about that, and maybe
sure.
we can sort of try to find a better way to do inspiration. We can make it like a table or something. Like it's that,
There
roll on
was, I
this or
think,
this. But
the Gaming and BS had a podcast not too long ago about inspiration and
oh,
Benny's
cool.
center, but they were going to be sort of the meta. What did they call it? Meta currency,
Hmm.
I think. But then they really mostly talked about inspiration.
Yeah. Yeah,
But we can talk about it too. Everyone can talk
it's just
about it.
it's a strange topic. Like, and it's honestly like of the things that usually see like sort of like clickbait YouTube videos, like I've been fault to it as well. Like feats suck, or
Oh, right.
like the wizard spell book sucks, like that kind of thing. I've never really seen that with inspiration. Maybe it's because people don't care, or like people don't see the light at the end of the what could be a road of sort of like
Well,
a
I think it's an easy one to leave out, and it's kind of small
yeah.
compared to say leaving out wizard spell books or something.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's a whole other beast. Like feats,
That it reminds me though of another thing that has taken me a long time to get used to in fifth edition, which is and I think it's because I didn't completely skip third and fourth, but they were during a lull in my gaming time.
We're gonna be on the same page. I never really played either, so
But it took me a while to get comfortable with the idea of a non-neutral druid or a non-lawful good paladin, and a lot of those things, and a lot of those race and class restrictions, and a lot of the alignment, the weight that's given to alignment is really solid in the old adventures because it was such an important part of the rule set.
it was.
And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
there's another piece that's really hard to bring into fifth edition, or if you have this encounter that's all hinges on the fact that the druid is neutral,
Hmm.
and now we have, what's this world coming to? But yeah, you have these, whatever, these good druids out there, and so suddenly figuring out how to deal with all of that, or the neutral paladin, or whatever it is,
Sure. Sure.
um, and those are kind of tough too.
Yeah, I
And
agree.
also, I keep running across stuff. A dwarf finds this on a 2 and 6, where everybody else finds this on a 1 and 6. It's like, well, okay, it's not a dwarf. Maybe it's someone with stone cunning.
Right.
Maybe it's somebody skilled in survival. Maybe it's
Yeah.
somebody who has dark. Whatever. There's some other group that's special for some other reason.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like, and I'm gonna say this very I feel like picking your race doesn't really have those perks anymore. Like I mean it does in a sense, but I don't know. Like I feel like I, for the most part, can play whatever and not feel behind in any way. Which is a good and bad thing.
Right.
When I'm playing a dwarf, I really, really want to feel like, I'm getting something out of being a dwarf. Not specifically just a strength bonus or a con bonus or a wisdom bonus. Um, but back to the alignment point, I like alignment. I'm gonna say it. People are gonna hate me. That's fine. I love alignment. There's been this wave of people, which is nothing. There's nothing wrong with it at all. That that want to like throw out alignment from the game. I number one don't think it's true to like the roots of the game. But like I don't know. I just think it's an important note to step out of your player brain and into your character brain of, oh, I am no longer Ben. I am a, neutral druid. And while personally, like, or if I'm playing like an evil character, whatever it may be, I personally in real life would never ever harm anyone, or I'm always look out for the little guy. You know, I Spider-Man comics were my shit growing up. You know, but you know, if I'm playing in the game and my character's alignment maybe says, oh, if we take this casualty now, it'll work out better in the big scope of things. It's easier for me to look at that note on my alignment to say, remind myself that I'm playing a character right now. I'm not playing me. So yeah, I like alignment. I think it's important, especially, you know, for that class relation as well. And it also can guide your decisions in game, or help guide your decisions rather.
Right. Yeah, that's a fun one, because I was going to say I agree with you completely, and then I started thinking, I play a lot of, I probably play about 50-50 Call of Cthulhu and, broadly speaking, the D&D family of games.
Sure.
And certainly in Call of Cthulhu, I often play selfish, or I don't know about evil, but different, you know, characters that have
self-interest.
Yeah, well, or personalities that are significantly different from mine, or maybe an alignment that's different from mine.
Yeah.
But we, of course, don't have the alignment cue there to help us prod us along. It's just a note, you know. And so
Sure.
I agree with you that alignment, so there's that part of alignment, which is sort of the helping me to make decisions as a player so that I can sort of push, or maybe my looking to see my character go from chaotic to neutral over the course of a year, whatever, all that kind of role-playing stuff. And then there's also all of this sword can only be attuned to by a lawful person, or this trap only affects neutral people, or it affects these alignments differently, or the old detect alignment type spells or protection, you know, all of that stuff, which was very mechanical. And it was sort of another axis of ways to differentiate characters mechanically. So we had race and class and level and alignment, and maybe your stats a little bit, you know. So some things might only affect characters with a wisdom under 14, and some things might only affect lawful good characters, and some might only affect elves, and, you know, like, there's all these different ways of sort of dividing up the world, and alignment was one of them and is now much less one of them. So you sort of lose a tool, and I'm not sure what we gain by diminishing its importance, but yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I too find it a little. Yeah, I think it's a good way to say it, is like, what are we getting out of canning it? You know, I've always been. Me and my friends have always sort of coined the phrase "keep it or can it." It's just an easy way to like sort of think about mechanics in 5e, because there's been some stuff that we just throw out. You know, we hardly use feats really. We've all kind of agreed that it can like kind of make or break the game. That's only me personally in our game. You know, feats work very well in other games. I think for Adventurers League, you know, a lot of people play Adventure. Right, honestly, like, I'm just damage control over 100 right now. No, but I just don't think that they have a place in my game specifically. So, you know, whether we want to keep this rule or can it, it's a very simple term. You know, we sort of talk about the value of what it's going to offer for the game and what it's going to take away from the game. And a lot of the times when we can it, it's because it's not offering extra value to the overall game and to all the players, rather than the one player specifically. But yeah, I think I like alignment. I do.
I mean,
I am like a guy who thinks paladins should be lawful good, and that's gonna pull in a lot of hate. But
well, I think it is like one of the things I struggle with and I teach. That's my day job, and one of the things I struggle with when I think about 5e and the rules and so forth is that I grew up with this stuff, and for me, like, alignment is not something I need to think about in order to understand.
Yeah,
at least
totally.
I pretend that's true. Whether or not I understand is another question. But when I think about new players to the game, and I think, wow, they're having to learn all of these things, and okay, so if alignment is not something that is baked into your brain, does it add as much to the game? Maybe it is worth getting rid of, or at least leaving off for 4 or 5 years, and then something you could bring in to sort of say, hey, does this add something to the game? Now that I don't have to think about how to make attacks or
Right.
how my magic system works and all of that kind of stuff, because there is a lot to process. And I mean, there's no, even the simplest D&D style fantasy games, there's a lot there. I mean, if you're sort of coming in, you need to learn about, what makes elves and dwarves different, and what are all these monsters we're attacking, and how long does a torch last, and what's the difference between these kinds of lanterns, and how do I choose, all this stuff, and so I could see simplifying for its own sake, in order to.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of what the point is with a lot of the people thinking is, if we're gonna throw out anything, it's gonna be alignment. Because people just forget about it. It's something for a lot of people that they write on the top of their character sheet and then they forget about until a moral quandary comes up and they go all of a sudden, oh wait, I'm lawful good. I know the answer to this question. And a lot of the times the nature of each sort of section, like lawful good, neutral good, it can all get misconstrued. There's only like a couple sentences, like there's like 2 sentences I think in the actual rule book, in the player's handbook, about each, and then it gives you a little like 3 examples or whatever. And I want to say now, before people hate me for the lawful good thing, paladins listed as lawful good is an example of lawful good. I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure it's in 5th edition. I don't have my book to check.
I was gonna say my book's right here, but I'm gonna resist the urge to open it.
Believe. This was a huge thing on the internet, actually. Like it was like a couple years ago. I don't know if you saw, but Dawnforge cast. He's a D&D YouTuber. He made a 15-minute video on why paladins are lawful good, and then the internet erupted, and Reddit just lost their minds.
Mission successful.
Yeah, right. Honestly, like, good way to grow a channel right there.
Yeah.
But he's a brilliant YouTuber. I like him a lot. He does a lot of mechanic kind of stuff. I mean, I didn't intend for this conversation to be mostly about alignment, but I'm glad we had it. Alignment and inspiration. People are learning things today, which is important.
That's right.
Is there anything else in 5th edition that? Okay, let's maybe what's your favorite thing? Like, what do you think that they hit home really hard? For me, it's advantage, disadvantage. I think that's like one of the coolest ideas. That's super simple. Like that just
I love advantage.
The game so well.
I like the fact that it is, so they give a bunch of sort of specific examples, but then they also very specifically give the tool an open-ended nature.
Right.
We all as GMs and players know this is a thing you can just do.
Right.
I do like the saving throw system. I like so I was schooled the other day. I had thought that the ability to combine any skill with any stat was so that you could do, instead of wisdom perception, for some reason you could do dexterity perception if it fit the story better.
Right.
That was a rule as written, but it turns out it's an optional rule as written.
Yes.
It's a clearly stated optional rule.
One of those optional things, which sore
but
feats.
It's one that I like a lot, and because I think that actually brings back for me a lot of the sort of old school flexibility again, of how to. I, as a player, want to make my character succeed. I can say, well, my character has proficiency in nautical tools, and I'm going to try to do this real Dexy thing using nautical tools in order to blank. And so I want to make a dexterity nautical tools skill check.
Sure.
And that kind of player skill metagaming thing I really like. To me, that's a fun.
Yeah,
I think. Yeah.
I agree. And totally to give another example, for people who may be confused what we're talking about, just to make sure I'm not confused on what we're talking about right now, it would be similar to like I always go back to my friend who's barbarian. To intimidate, he sometimes used strength. Like he like broke a table in half. Is that that's sort of what you're talking about right now, right? Just
Absolutely.
using like different skills in order to get to the same result. Like
Yeah,
instead of
instead of
using
relying on
charisma,
charisma for
yeah,
intimidating
you would use
people.
strength, which also makes sense for the sake of story.
Yeah. Yep.
So yeah, that's another. It's like you said, an optional rule. So are feats. Just want to throw that out there. It's not in the game. It's an optional rule. No, I'm not a feat hater. We use some of them. But yeah, I think that's a good point as well, because that's something that I don't even think I actually read it in the book before I started using it. I think it just came up in the
Oh, right.
like just raw,
Of
it
course.
happened early, when my barbarian friend we were role playing. I think we were probably in a tavern or something in a city, and he was trying to intimidate to get information out of someone, and he goes, well, my charisma sucks. And I was like, what are you doing? And he's like, I'm just gonna smash this table to show him like how powerful we are. And I was like, go ahead and roll strength, why not? And that's sort of like how that came out.
Yeah, and I suppose the other option for that example would be to, if you didn't like this mixed match, right, you could do a charisma, but you give them advantage because they did something cool by breaking a table.
Totally. Yeah. And that's
Which,
kind of where the moment inspiration can come in.
right,
Wow, look
yeah.
at us putting all these hooks together.
Because I do like so from one of the things I like about 5e is it's really solid in my opinion for the sort of hero game.
Sure.
In terms of making players feel cool because of the stuff their characters are doing. Stuff like the sneak attack damage that's always available basically, and the
Always. It is always.
yeah, some of the paladins smiting stuff. I mean, there's just so much stuff in the rules where you can just sort of, oh, I'm gonna step this up. I'm gonna and that's fun. I think the other side of that though is they did put enough meat in the game that a GM who's focused on it with a party who is interested in it can run a sort of dark, gritty game. I mean, I had
Sure.
my home game. Uh, I had them on the run in a positive way. They were going after things, but there was enough motivation that they didn't even get themselves a short rest. Like they talked themselves out of doing short rest.
That's amazing.
And they were just, I mean, by the time they got to this encounter, they were just they'd spent everything.
Right. Yeah.
So you can run this game where people are desperate,
Right.
and there's exhaustion. I think exhaustion's a great mechanic that's in
Yeah.
there.
That's actually something. Sorry to sort of jump in, but like, glad you brought that up, because that's a thing we're going to use more in our campaign. We're going to try to change it a little bit so it becomes more prominent. But yeah, continue.
We ran a friend and I started a sort of a mini organized play group in town, and basically we did 2-hour games once a week, and it was just whoever showed up played.
Mm-hmm.
And for a while we were just sort of playing around, but I think we did a month or 6 weeks that was basically an exhaustion campaign arc,
Mm-hmm.
where the magic in the world, the evil, whatever it was, post-apocalyptic, all this blah blah blah, nobody could sleep, and so they spent a month trying to collect the materials they needed to build a dream shelter over their city so they could sleep. But it meant that they were just operating exhausted, 1, 2, 3, 4 levels of exhaustion for that entire 6
Hopefully
weeks.
not to 6. Yeah.
Yeah, hopefully not. Nobody made. Anyway, and
Anyway, moving on.
but that was. I mean, it was totally artificial. I mean, that was the GMs. That was us writers metagaming. It's like, I want to see how far we can push exhaustion. I want to
Yeah.
see, and the players were willing to go along for the ride. And so yeah, we got to see how, and you sort of bring in all of the types of monsters that can cause exhaustion and the other things that go on, and yeah, so it's in there, but I think that if you want to run that kind of game, you kind of have to dig around a little bit, and obviously you have to have players that want to play in that kind of game.
Definitely, yeah, and that's another important thing. Listen to the players, because they're everyone's fun matters, and usually it's at the expense of the dungeon master. But there's many situations where the dungeon master is putting his or her or their fun over over the players, thinking you're gonna have fun in this encounter no matter what, this scenario.
Yeah, no, and I guess for me it's often the reverse. That if my players are having fun, I tend to enjoy the game.
Yes, yeah, no matter like what vision I saw for how it was going to go, for me it's fun seeing sort of how it can go off the rails sometimes, because I'm a little bit proud of my players for thinking outside of my box, not
Absolutely.
even the box but my box, because it's sort of like your Pandora's box that you're releasing into the world, and it's fun to see how they can sort of navigate through that in ways that you didn't think they would.
No, I tie that back to teaching also, that it doesn't
Oh yeah, big
matter
time.
how good of a class. I mean, what matters is what the student. That's all that matters.
Yes.
That's the only measure of success is what the
Yeah.
students
What random question? What grade do you teach?
University.
Oh, you are a university. That's what I thought. But
Yeah.
yeah, you a professor rather than yeah. But that's awesome. So real quick before we wrap things up, I mentioned that I would consider you like a gaming philanthropist as well. You have the Extra Life shirt on right now. You do like a charity live stream, right?
So what we do for Extra Life, we do a few things. We do a 24-hour game that's live streamed once a year,
Yep.
and that's sort of the end of our year's fundraising. We run a lot of games. I shouldn't say a lot of games. We run a few games at gaming conventions, and basically we run real fast and loose games where people are dying left and right, and
Yep.
people can come into the table and leave the table, but the critical mechanic that we add to the game is that money can make stuff happen.
Definitely. Yeah, that's
So
often used in, right. Yeah.
yeah, so
Like
$5
throw
gets
down.
you a healing potion, or
Yeah.
puts the dragon on the other person's table, and then $10 sends the dragon back to your table, and you're like, oh shoot, now we better put 15 down.
Yeah.
And those are a hoot. Those are some of the most fun games. Both Call of Cthulhu, DCC. I think we've done 5e. Those are always just super over the top, because it's, as a GM for those games, your job, no matter what, is to say yes. And
Yes.
the
Yep.
only thing that matters is that people keep throwing money on the table.
Yep. Exactly. We've done similar things at my game store. For not for Extra Life, but for a different charity that my friend made. She's 16. Made a suicide prevention organization called Jasper's Game Day. She is one of the most inspirational people that I know, and she is almost like 5 years younger than I am. So yeah, like it's very cool that you're doing those kind of things. While you're having fun playing these games that we all love, but you're making like a larger than just the table impact. So that's awesome that you're doing that kind of stuff. We talked a lot on stuff, which is I'm assuming for the people viewing or listening, however you're consuming this, that's kind of how these conversations are going to go with whoever guests I have. I have a bunch of questions that will keep us back on the rails if we need to get back to home. But rambling is kind of fun, especially when it comes to just talking about fifth edition has sort of been the topic of conversation today.
So I have a question for your audience.
Yeah,
For
totally.
your chat. So one of the things we are thinking about at Frog God is marking our adventures in a way that will help people choose them. So obviously we mark them by level tier. That's a thing,
Sure.
6 characters, 3rd tier, whatever. But I've been also thinking about, can we mark them on and I'm going to use these 2 words, sandbox railroad range, a little needle, or something like that. Maybe a sort of location specific versus story centered versus character centered, whatever.
Yeah.
But so one of the questions I have is a word that is not so heavily laden with hate as railroad, because
Yeah.
I will put forth that many of us love, both as players and as GMs, a good railroad.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
I put the stress on the word good, because a good railroad feels like you want to go there.
Mm-hmm.
But I have had a ton of fun on relatively linear adventures.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good idea. I think that, I think, you might relate to this a little bit. Is like it would be similar to like Rate My Professor, where there's a bunch of tags saying helpful, a lot of homework, exams
Right.
are easy, like that kind of thing. But instead of like that in the Frog God, would it like be on the back of the book, something like that says like role playing or dungeon crawl, or is it that kind of thing?
Yeah,
More
I'm
or
kind of
less.
thinking, I mean, my initial thought was sort of 3 circles that have a needle that can point one way or the other. So you can sort of say, easy to hard,
Sure.
railroad to sandbox, and one other
Mhm.
range thing.
Sure.
But it could be words, it could be.
I think it's a good idea. I do think it's a good idea. Because it specifically gives the people a better idea of what they're going to be buying without having to do a Google search or, thumb through the book for 15 minutes before they buy it.
Exactly. Yeah, to give people a sense of, this would be a relatively easy adventure to run because it's more of a railroad. This would
Mm.
be, this is more of a sandbox. You're going to have to make things up a little bit more. This one is full of, this is sort of a metagamey one. It's full of puzzles and tricks and so forth. This one's, and also it could be social encounter and combat encounter, sort of
Mm.
lots of one or lots of the other.
Yeah.
I don't know. So yeah, the 2
That's a good
questions
idea.
I guess are,
Yeah.
what are some things you are interested in terms of defining module or adventure types, and then the second more specific one is a friendly word for railroad.
Right. Yeah. Linear. Let's use linear.
It might be linear. Linear is good.
Yeah, that's a good one. I like the use of that. All right. Well, I think that pretty much wraps us up today. Like I said, we got through a lot of great stuff today. Not only, talking about you, because you've worked very hard for Frog God. So, everyone, thanks you for that. As well as got to know you a little bit more. Talked about inspiration, alignment, other 5th edition rules, and sort of how you can improve them, or if you don't see them needing to be improved at all. I think we got through a lot of constructive stuff today. And I hope you guys like this video. There's going to be a pretty solid amount of these sort of style videos, talking with other frogs, talking with non-frogs, just talking about the game that we all love and the whole reason why we are currently here in life and in this stage of the world. So thank you, Edwin, for coming on.
It was fun.
Yeah, it's amazing having your insight. And like I sort of mentioned when we were doing the live streams and stuff, it was always fun talking to you about 5e mechanics and stuff, because it's rare to find someone sort of in the old school community that is so well versed in 5th edition as you are. So it's cool having these conversations. I really enjoy it.
Yeah, it's been super, and I will happily have another 1 or 3 with you if.
Yeah, we're gonna have you back. Definitely.
Right, cool.
So thank you everyone so much for watching. Leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it at any points. Throw it down in your recommendations in the comment section down below if you have a recommendation for a guest that you'd like me to bring on, as well as, like I said, congratulate Edwin, because it's a huge move. Everything he's doing is amazing. So yeah, I think that pretty much wraps it up for us. Subscribe for more content. Like I said, every Monday is going to be the upload time, as well as sprinkling in videos. Most likely will be on Thursdays or Fridays if we're going to throw in some extra content for you guys during the week, which will probably be happening more often than not because I like making videos. It's fun. With that, keep those rolls and spirits high, and we'll see you next time.